This has got to be one of the most frustrating things that I've seen all week. John Kerry is giving a conference regarding the transition to green energy, and he's asked a question about the loss of jobs. This is a prime example of how far people go to avoid answering the question, tell you everything except for what you asked for or wanted to hear.
If you would, there's very certainly are oil and gas industry workers who are watching you both right now, who will hear the message that the takeaway to them is that they are seeing an end to their livelihoods. What do you say to them, particularly those people who President Trump struck a chord with on the campaign trail when he promised to save their jobs? What is your message to them right now? And also to the oil industry executives who are listening. Are you putting them on notice today?
Okay, notice she asked him questions about two distinct groups of people. She asked about the people who lost their job, and she also asked about the oil executives. But more specifically, the people who lost their jobs. That's the key point here. The people who lost their jobs. What do you say to them? Listen to his response.
Well, we didn't come here to put anybody on notice except to the seriousness of President Biden's intent to do what needs to be done to deal with this crisis, and it is a crisis. With respect to those workers, no two people are more in this room are more concerned about it, and the President of the United States has expressed in every comment he has made about climate the need to grow the new jobs that pay better, that are cleaner.
Couple different things that I picked up on there. You might have picked up on something different. Notice he uses the word crisis. They love the word crisis. It's not like they're there to govern or even to lead, but they're there for crisis management, right? So as long as we're in a state of crisis, they're managing the crisis so they can do a lot of things that they wouldn't be able to do if their job was simply to govern. If it was to lead, maybe if they had to lead, then they would lead by changing people's minds first, so that people would go along with certain things. But it seems like they're just trying to drive a hammer, drive a nail in. They're just trying to force certain changes to take place. But first, he says it's a crisis. Right? She asked him what he would say to these people about having lost their jobs, and he immediately starts shifting the conversation toward the future. Notice that was the question. What would you say to people who have already lost their jobs? Not about what's going to be happening in the future. What are you going to say to the people who have to pay their mortgages now, pay their rent now, put food in the refrigerator right now, put clothes on their families' backs right now, put fuel in their car right now? Not what you're trying to make happen in the future, but what are you going to tell those people right now? Let's continue.
You look at the consequences of black lung for a miner, for instance, and measure that against the fastest growing job in the United States before COVID was solar power technician. The same people can do those jobs, but the choice of doing the solar power one now is a better choice.
If it is a better choice, why is it a better choice? Was it a better choice because the market dictated that? Was it a better choice because that's what the person would prefer to do with their life? Or was it a better choice because you're mandating things be put in place to force that to be not only the best option for them, but in many cases the only option for them? But if that's not what they want to do, what if that's not what the market wants from them? What if the world involves more than just the way you want things to be? What if at some point we have to consider facts, and we have to consider the truth, and we have to consider reality? But what he says next will put this all into perspective. Listen closer.
Similarly, you have the second fastest growing job pre-COVID was wind turbine technician. This is happening 75%, 70% of all the electricity that's come online in the United States in the last few years came from renewables.
Okay, so first, a question. If this is happening, why not let it happen? If you believe that this is the natural course of things, this is the way things are going, why not allow that to happen? Why not allow nature to take its course? If you believe that that's the direction we're going to go into, which long term probably will be, I don't know why he didn't mention hydroelectricity. You know, the wind stops blowing, but the currents under the ocean never stop. Nobody ever talks about that. It's a weird thing. I don't know. Let me stay on topic. But he said these things are growing, right? And there was an artful way of putting out information there, because he says in the last so many years that these are the jobs that have been growing. But let's look at the numbers. Okay, where do we get our electricity from? Where is energy coming from the United States? Do a simple Google search, and you'll find some very basic information, like this here, November 2nd, 2020. Right? What is U.S. electricity generation by energy source? Okay, so fossil fuels in billion kilowatts, 2,582 billion kilowatts hours. Share of the total, 62.6%. Natural gas, 38.4%. Coal, 23.4%. Petroleum, 0.4%. This is where the United States is getting its energy from, by source. I don't see solar on there. If you notice right there, Google lets you know there's more rows. There's 20 more rows. Lets you know that solar and wind, they're a little further down. So where are we getting our energy from right now? This is where we're getting our energy from right now. So what does that tell you? That tells you that this is where the jobs are right now. So if you have some fantasy land, future far off fantasy land where the way things are going to be, those jobs aren't available right now because this doesn't exist right now. But people need to eat right now. People need to have a roof over their head right now. People need to have shelter right now. The question was asked, what do you tell those people who just lost their jobs right now? And now you start talking about some mystical future. You would think a real reporter would press them on that. It didn't happen. It should have been up one side, down the other. And at a minimum, they should have said, I asked you a specific question. That's great. All this is great, but could you answer my question? Let's continue.
Coal plants have been closing over the last 20 years. So what President Biden wants to do is make sure those folks have better choices, that they have alternatives, that they can be the people who go to work to make the solar panels. They were making them here at home. That is going to be a particular focus of the Build Back Better agenda. And I think that unfortunately workers have been fed a false narrative.
Okay, so if coal plants have been closing for the last 20 years and this thing is progressing at a natural pace, is naturally progressing, driven by the market, driven by the need, why would you need to interfere with that? You know, it would seem to me that the logic would be, if you think there is a better solution, you would come up with the better solution first, and then that would replace the old mechanism. You see, because if you can make something that produces just as much energy, or produces energy at a less expensive cost, cheaper energy, easier to get a hold of, easier for people to obtain, whatever the benefit is, if it outweighs what's already in place, people will naturally shift to that. If an electric car makes more sense to them financially without the government trying to subsidize everything, then electric cars would take over the roads. They're not going to spend extra unless they just want to have a gasoline engine, and that's just their choice. If people want to do that, then let them do that. But what I'm saying is, these things will happen. The market will drive these things. And if the market doesn't drive these things, there's no proof that the market can sustain these things unless the government intervenes. And that's what these people are all about. So let's hear from somebody who this directly affects, since it's not a hypothetical. This is actually affecting real people. Let's hear what one of them has to say.
I was working in Nebraska building a pump station. But, as soon as the new administration came in on day one, they decided they want to put 11,000 people out of work. Basically, it was the moment that he signed the executive order. It was about 2:00 Thursday when we were told that we're not going to progress any further. But we took a couple of days packing our stuff up, and we actually got laid off Friday, and I'll be taking my unemployed self back to Arkansas in the morning.
That guy was a much more calm and collected man than I am. I had a lot of respect for that guy. He held his composure very well, considering what's happening. Yeah, he held it together pretty well. I might have said some other things, but you on day one, because you wanna please all of these people that you made promises to that weren't very well thought out in order to get elected. You're just determined to do these things. The studies haven't been done. The jobs haven't been created, but you just want to go ahead and start taking action. And the first thing you do is you put 11,000 people out of work. How much sense does that make? And again, he hasn't addressed what you would say to these people. What would you say to the gentleman who just gave his testimony? Mr. Kerry, what would you say to him? That was the question that was asked, and you still haven't answered that. Let's see if he does. Let's continue.
No surprise, right? For the last few years, they've been fed the notion that somehow dealing with climate is coming at their expense. No, it's not.
So he says that people have been fed a notion that dealing with climate is somehow coming at their expense. That was a dig at former President Trump. Right, that he's been feeding people notions. But the feeding or fed probably should be looked at a different way. See, people were being fed. People's families were being fed. It wasn't feeding notions. It was feeding paychecks to people. He says that they came under the impression that it would happen at their expense. Isn't that exactly what happened? Didn't it happen under their expense? Because the loss is in the present. And what he continues to speak about is in the future. Let's see how he tries to mesh that together and somehow make sense of it. Doesn't make sense to me, but let me know what you think.
What's happening to them is happening because of other market forces already taking place. And what the financiers, the big banks, the asset managers, private investors, venture capital are all discovering is there's a lot of money to be made in the creation of these new jobs in these sectors.
Two things here. Two, I don't know if you caught that, but two things. One, he says it's other market forces that were already taking place. If that was the case, then these people wouldn't have lost their jobs by executive order. They lost their jobs by executive. When he signed that executive order, that's when the things that were necessary for these people to lose their jobs was put in motion. So it wasn't any natural forces. It was the fact that he came in all willy-nilly, signing executive orders. And the second part of that these financiers and big bankers, that's exactly what happened. They see a lot. He told the truth. He told the truth. Except in reality, it's not a reaction by these financiers and big banks. They're driving it. And they're using these people as puppets to do so. Everything's always upside down with these people. They always flip it upside down. If you want to know what's really going on, you flip it over. These big banks and financiers aren't reacting to this change. They're driving it. That's why they're shoving climate change down our throats. They're going to make this thing a reality. Well, none of them can tell you what the temperature was 200 years ago. None of them really has an accurate measurement of what our presence here has done to the environment. As a matter of fact, and they will confuse you, they will distract you. These are the same people that will talk about Mars and the moon when they don't even know what's underneath the North Pole or the Arctic. They don't know what's underneath that ice. They don't even study Antarctica. But these are the same people who are talking about studying planets far, far away. They always try to keep your mind away from the reality by pushing these abstract ideas that have no proof. And now you look up 11,000 people have lost their jobs because he's got a vivid imagination. Anyhow, I realize I may have upset some people with that one because there are some people who think that the Earth is going to catch fire in about 5 or 10 years.
So whether it's green hydrogen that is going to come, whether it is geothermal heat, or whatever it's going to be, those are jobs. The same worker who works in South Carolina today putting together a BMW, which happens to be made there, and is currently an internal combustion engine, can put together a car, but it's electric.
I'm sorry. He doesn't even know what it's going. He said whatever it's going to be. They don't even have that figured out yet, right? But in any case, it does not exist. So what job do I have? How can I have a job if it doesn't exist? Somebody please help me out here. What sense does this make?
So this is not a choice between having jobs, having good jobs, having the quality of life. Quality of life will be better when Gina has put her team together that produces choices for us that are healthier, less cancer, cleaner air.
Come on, man. Come on. Really. Come on now. It's not a choice. It's not a choice about having jobs. But 11,000 people just got fired, and there is no job for them to have right now. But it's not a choice about having. Let's continue.
The greatest cost in America, the greatest cause of children being hospitalized every summer in the United States, we spend $55 billion a year on it, is environmentally induced asthma.
So now it's about the children. Environmentally induced asthma. If that's the case, why you got them all running around with masks on their face? Bing, good question, right? Anyway, let's continue.
That will change as we begin to rein in what we used to call pollution in this country, because it is pollution. And I think that workers are going to see that with the efforts of the Biden administration, they're going to have a much better set of choices. And frankly, it will create more jobs than stuck where we were.
Okay, so, Mr. Kerry speaks about a bright future. And let me put all this together in a serious way. He speaks about a bright future, and most of what he talks about as far as going into the future, I actually agree with. I think that alternative forms of energy will be a great thing. I think there's going to be energy sources that we haven't even discovered yet. I think there's going to be a more advanced energy sources than nuclear energy. I believe all these advances are coming. They are coming. I believe that's the natural course of things. As we evolve, we become more intelligent. We record more data, more information. We rediscover more information that we knew at one time. We will continue to advance, and I believe there's a natural course to do that. It will be driven by thought, by people thinking, people inventing, people being creative, and the market. What it should not be driven by is by the government, because I believe they're the least qualified people to lead that charge. Anywho, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. See you on the next video. Take care. Peace.